Others will say that we shouldn't even talk about cutting spending until the economy is fully recovered. These are mostly folks in my party. I'm sympathetic to this view, which is one of the reasons I supported the payroll tax cuts we passed in December. It's also why we have to use a scalpel and not a machete to reduce the deficit. So that we can keep making the investments that create jobs. But doing nothing on the deficit is just not an option. Our debt has grown so large that we could do real damage to the economy if we don't begin a process now to get our fiscal house in order. Finally, there are those who believe we shouldn't make any reforms to Medicare. Medicaid, or Social Security, out of fear that any talk of change to these programs will immediately usher in the sort of steps that the House Republicans have proposed. And I understand those fears. But I guarantee that if we don't make any changes at all, we won't be able to keep our commitment to a retiring generation that will live longer and will face higher healthcare costs than those who came before. Indeed, to those in my own party, I say that if we truly believe in a progressive vision of our society, we have an obligation to prove that we can afford our commitments. If we believe the government can make a difference in people's lives, we have the obligation to prove that it works by making government smarter and leaner and more effective. Of course, there are those who simply say there's no way we can. Come together at all and agree on a solution to this challenge. They'll say the politics of the city are just too broken. The choices are just too hard, the parties are just too far apart. And after a few years on this job, I have some sympathy for this view. But I also know that we've come together before and met big challenges. Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill came together to save Social Security for future generations. The first President Bush and a Democratic Congress came together to reduce the deficit. President Clinton and a Republican Congress battled each other ferociously. Disagreed on just about everything, but they still found a way to balance the budget. And in the last few months, both parties have come together to pass historic tax relief and spending cuts. And I know there are Republicans and Democrats in Congress. Who want to see a balanced approach to deficit reduction. And even those Republicans I disagree with most strongly, I believe are sincere about wanting to do right by their country. We may disagree on our visions, but I truly believe they want to do the right thing. So I believe we can, and must, come together again. This morning, I met with Democratic and Republican leaders. In Congress to discuss the approach that I laid out today. And in early May, the Vice President will begin regular meetings with leaders in both parties with the aim of reaching a final agreement on a plan to reduce the deficit and get it done by the end of June. I don't expect the details in any final agreement to look exactly like the approach I laid out today. This a democracy? That's not how things work. I'm eager to hear other ideas from all ends of the political spectrum. And though I'm sure the criticism of what I've said here today will be fierce in some quarters, and my critique of the House Republican approach has been strong. Americans deserve and will demand that we all make an effort to bridge our differences and find common ground. This larger debate that we're having, this larger debate about the size and the role of government, it has been with us since our founding days. And during moments of great challenge and change, like the one that we're living through now. The debate gets sharper and it gets more vigorous. That's not a bad thing. In fact, it's a good thing. As a country that prizes both our individual freedom and our obligations to one another. This is one of the most important debates that we can have. But no matter what we argue, no matter where we stand, we've always held certain beliefs as Americans. We believe that in order to preserve our own freedoms and pursue our own happiness, we can't just think about ourselves. We have to think about the country that made these liberties possible. We have to think about our fellow citizens with whom we share a community. And we have to think about what's required to preserve the American dream for future generations. This sense of responsibility to each other and to our country, this isn't a partisan feeling. It isn't a Democratic or a Republican idea. It's patriotism. The other day I received a letter from a man in Florida. He started off by telling me he didn't vote for me and he hasn't always agreed with me. But even though he's worried about our economy and the state of our politics, here's what he said, I still believe. I believe in that great country that my grandfather told me about. I believe that somewhere lost in this quagmire of petty bickering on every news station. The American dream is still alive, we need to use our dollars here rebuilding. Refurbishing and restoring all that our ancestors struggled to create and maintain. We as a people must do this together. No matter the color of the state one comes from or the side of the aisle one might sit on. I still believe. I still believe as well. And I know that if we can come together and uphold our responsibilities to one another and to this larger enterprise that is America. We will keep the dream of our founding alive in our time, and we will pass it on to our children. We will pass on to our children a country that we believe in. Thank you. God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Barack Obama. George W. Bush Library Dedication Address. Delivered April 25, 2013, Southern Methodist University, Dallas, Texas. To President Bush and Mrs. Bush, to President Clinton and now former Secretary Clinton, to President George H. W. Bush and Mrs. Bush. To President and Mrs. Carter, to current and former world leaders and all the distinguished guests here today. Michelle and I are honored to be with you to mark this historic occasion. This is a Texas-sized party. And that's worthy of what we're here to do today. Honor the life and legacy of the 43rd President of the United States, George W. Bush. When all the living former presidents are together, it's also a special day for our democracy. We've been called the world's most exclusive club, and we do have a pretty nice clubhouse. But the truth is, our club is more like a support group. The last time we all got together was just before I took office, and I needed that. Because as each of these leaders will tell you, no matter how much you may think you're ready to assume the office of the presidency, it's impossible to truly understand the nature of the job until it's yours, until you're sitting at that desk. And that's why every president gains a greater appreciation for all of those who served before them. For the leaders from both parties who've taken on the momentous challenges and felt the enormous weight of the nation on their shoulders. And for me, that appreciation very much extends to President Bush. The first thing I found in that desk the day I took office was a letter from George. And one that demonstrated his compassion and his generosity. For he knew that I would come to learn what he had learned, that being president, above all, is a humbling job. There are moments where you make mistakes. There are times where you wish you could turn back the clock. And what I know is true about President Bush, and I hope my successor will say about me. Is that we love this country and we do our best. Now, in the past, President Bush has said it's impossible. To pass judgment on his presidency while he's still alive. So maybe this is a little bit premature. But even now, there are certain things that we know for certain. We know about the son who was raised by two strong, loving parents in Midland, famously inheriting. As he says, my daddy's eyes and my mother's mouth, the young boy who once came home after a trip to a museum. And proudly presented his horrified mother with a small dinosaur tailbone he had smuggled home in his pocket. I'll bet that went over great with Barbara. We know about the young man who met the love of his life at a dinner party. Ditching his plans to go to bed early and instead talking with the brilliant and charming Laura Welch late into the night. We know about the father who raised two remarkable, caring, beautiful daughters. Even after they tried to discourage him from running for president, saying, "Dad, you're not as cool as you think you are." Mr. President, I can relate. And now we see President Bush. The grandfather, just beginning to spoil his brand new granddaughter. So we know President Bush the man. And what President Clinton said is absolutely true: to know the man is to like the man. Because he's comfortable in his own skin. He knows who he is. He doesn't put on any pretenses. He takes his job seriously. but he doesn't take himself too seriously. He is a good man.